let me start by saying this. I collect physical media. And the reason I collect physical media is because I was sick and tired of watching content and not owning it. There are streaming services where shows keep on joining the streaming service and then leaving again. It's all too confusing. You know, no one wants to subscribe to 5 streaming services so they can watch 5 shows. Nobody wants to do that. Very, very annoying. And so because of that, I'm like, bro, look, okay. Basically, I'm not going to watch anything unless I own it, unless it's something where it's like not time sensitive, but it's like I'm not going to wait 9 months to watch a season of this show. You know what I mean? So that's basically what I've been doing. I've been watching like almost exclusively things that I own or things in movie theaters. There are a handful of things I watch on streaming, but generally I will watch things that I own. I absolutely love this. It's been a wonderful experience. I have a Plex server and I have a shelf. And that's basically all I need for 99% of my entertainment needs. But I will say this about the 1%. And this is going to be a hot take because a lot of people have been popping off about this lately on YouTube. But streaming television is not that bad. It's not that bad at all. And I'm talking about on-demand content, television programs, and movies. I'm not talking about sports. That's a whole different conversation. But it's not that bad. And here's why. Streaming services are a great way, first of all, to discover programs, right? If you're collecting physical media, I wouldn't recommend running around buying a bunch of things that you haven't seen before. Ultimately, you're spending hundreds of dollars on things that you may or may not like. Now, sometimes you could do research and be like, oh, okay, I accept this risk, right? Or be like, oh, I think I'll like this thing because it's by that director I like. But generally, I wouldn't recommend spending a bunch of money on things that you haven't seen yet. That's just, I think, not smart and not wise when it comes to collecting physical media. Like, let's say you buy a bunch of like garbage Westerns and you spend like $300 on them and you don't like any of them. Well, then now you're out $300 and, you know, you just have a horrible viewing experience of all these dozens of bad movies. Streaming kind of helps you avoid that. For $15, $20, however many dollars a month, you can check out a show that you would have never ordinarily watched or purchased on your own. I'm actually experiencing this recently with my one of my siblings, as well as my dad. We watch shows on streaming together from time to time, and they're watching 3 shows at once right now. They're watching the reboot of Hawaii Five-0 from the beginning. They're watching Blue Bloods from the beginning, and they're watching Homicide: Life on the Street from the beginning. And it's been fun, like dipping into these shows with them, because through this I've discovered the gem that is Homicide: Life on the Street. Fantastic television show. I've only seen maybe a couple dozen episodes, and it's already, I think, my number 3 favorite show of all time. Now, I am someone who's also somewhat of a completionist. If I start a season, I really want to finish it, unless it's so bad that I'm like, I'm not finishing this. If it's not bad, I want to finish it, usually. So, you know, I am going to go back through the series and watch it all the way through at some point. But for now, as I'm discovering this show and enjoying it with my siblings, it's a great experience to be able to just sit down and watch a show with them, especially since I'm not paying for it and they're not paying relatively much to watch this show. And I use Homicide as an example because if you go to Homicide, it's on Peacock, I want to say. Go to Peacock, turn on Homicide, you'll notice something interesting. Homicide is in 4K on Peacock. Now, if you're a collector of physical media or you're someone who buys digital media, you might also notice something about this series. You can't get this series in 4K if you just buy it outright. As a matter of fact, you can't even get it in 1080p. Going even further, you can't even buy this in standard definition on digital, at least from iTunes, which is the only digital purchasing platform that I use. At least on iTunes, you can't buy Homicide: Life on the Street at all. And the only way to own this, from what I can tell, is by getting a DVD. I'm sure someone in the comments will correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I'm sure that this applies to other shows, so I'm fine with using it as an example. The only way I can own this show, or the only way I will own this show, is if I buy a DVD. The viewing experience of watching Homicide: Life in the Street on an ad-free tier Peacock is going to be better than the experience of me watching it on a DVD. Now, some people might be like, "Oh, the bit rate. Oh, the potential streaming issues. Oh, the glitches." Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. I've had no issues. Now, I will say I think we use a whatever was the most powerful Roku device 2 or 3 years ago. I think like a Roku 4K Premiere. So I will use the caveat that we use that as a streaming device. We have a 4K television. The 4K is SDR. The 4K TV is SDR, but it does have 4K, so it's 4K enabled, and that's what we use. The experience is impeccable. The app runs smoothly. There are no glitches, very little buffering. The subtitles work. There are no quality drops at all. Now, to be fair, we do have a Wi-Fi 6E compatible system, and not everybody has that. So some of you guys might notice quality drops if you're using Wi-Fi 5 or you're still using the 2.4 gigahertz frequency for whatever reason on your Wi-Fi infrastructure. But it's impeccable. And some people might complain about the bit rate, but like I know for a fact, if I get a DVD, it's not going to look as crisp and it's not going to look as clean as a 4K restoration of Homicide: Life in the Street on streaming. And so I see all these people running around saying, "Oh, physical media always has the better experience than a streaming service. Streaming services experience will never compare to the experience of having it on physical media." And to an extent, I agree, right? If the internet goes out, if the power goes out, nothing's going to stop me from watching a DVD on my computer that is connected to a UPS, right? But at the same time, if you want the most pristine, highest quality experience, sometimes you've got something that's on DVD versus something that's streaming in HD. And, people might say the bitrate this, the bitrate that, but if you just look at it with the naked eye, well, I never look at things with the naked eye because if I did that, I wouldn't be able to see. But in general, if you just look at it with your eyes, the HD almost always is going to look better than the standard definition release unless you've got a really bad internet connection or it's a really bad upscaling. So, I'm not one to say, don't collect physical media. I'm a big fan of physical media. I've got more physical media over there that I need to unbox. But at the same time, I would caution people against being absolutists. Sometimes 4K isn't the best way to watch something. Sometimes just you got to go back to the Blu-ray. I know that there's a lot of controversy over the Lord of the Rings 4K, one of the Alien movies 4K releases. I think Terminator has a controversial 4K transfer, and some people choose the Blu-ray over that. I think some people just assume that if you go to the thing with the highest bit rate, you're going to have the best experience, and if you own it, you're always going to have a better experience than if you stream something. But that's just not entirely true. So I would caution against being an absolutist. What I would say is rather look at your entertainment experience and determine what it is that you value, right? Do you value discoverability? If you value discoverability, then, owning content might not be the way to go. If you can afford a streaming service, that might be worth your money more than spending it to own things that you might not like. Or maybe it's video quality. Well, maybe some things are on a 4K that are going to look better than a Blu-ray that you have or a DVD that you can get. That's something to consider. But maybe you're also a hardliner of being like, oh, well, I never want to experience commercials. And these streaming services have been adding commercials to what were previously non-commercial tiers that didn't have commercials in them. They were ad-free. I understand that perspective too. There are claims that you can go with both ways. But I don't know who else. I don't know who watches TV and is like, what? I really hope that this has a higher bit rate than YouTube TV. Like, I don't know anyone who thinks like that. I think about that sometimes when watching live sports, but in general, no one thinks about this when watching TV. So I would say before kind of like falling for the absolutist arguments of people online who are sort of trying to I don't want to say that they're being shills or grifters, but people who are sort of being cheerleaders for a particular format or particular entertainment experience. Before, sort of just bending to their arguments, just take a step back and figure out what it is that you want from your entertainment experience. Do you want the same things that these YouTubers want? Maybe not. Physical media isn't for everyone, and streaming isn't for everyone either. So I would say, don't pick one poison when the alternative might be an elixir. Actually, that's a terrible way to put it. I don't know why I said that. That's so cringe. But generally, just think before you stream and think before you buy. Maybe the experience that you're getting isn't what you're looking for, and maybe it's time to switch. Maybe it's time to switch from streaming to physical media. Maybe it's a switch from physical media to streaming. I think that you can have a healthy balance of doing both, but I just wouldn't blindly put yourself in just one camp or the other, because ultimately you might be isolating yourself from either the best viewing experience or checking out new shows and movies that you might like, and I don't think that either of those are good things to do.